But yeah, YouTube has been kind of one of my things.
YouTube University. Yeah.
I started with more of that. All right. So I'll just tell everybody we get the Men of the House podcast here in Austin, Texas with Just Be with Scottie G and doing a little double podcast today. So I'm going to ask him some questions. I was on the first half.
You want to do yours first, or you want to do mine first?
I'm going to start off with a few of mine.
Yeah, I'm down.
Like a few questions and mix these in.
Yeah, so, my questions are very basic. You
know? So, is it Just Be or moderately good?
So, when I
realized that's changed.
So yeah, so when we started the podcast, it was me and a buddy, and he's my camera guy. He's the one that does all my stuff when we go on location. We were kind of just jacking around the garage. My coaching at the time, I called it life moderated. The concept was, moderation and balance, which is still the concept of my coaching. The name was so just stale. It just felt so stale, And so it just made sense to call the podcast a moderately good podcast, around that same theme. And then somewhere along the way, I changed my idea of my coaching, and this whole idea of Just Be came from one of my therapists that said a statement to me that just resonated with me even today. And so that's what became Just Be. And then I realized that, what I was doing on the podcast was kind of my coaching. It was Just Be. That was it. And so it made sense to change the name. I always tell people it's kind of like, when a musician starts playing music, he probably just doesn't play the genre of music that he likes or plays, or he might even get in a band that is not his favorite genre of music. And if he were to be in a country band and then go play metal, they wouldn't keep the same name.
Right.
And so the evolution of what has happened for me brought on the evolution. And so it just made sense. You know what I mean? It didn't make sense to keep it a moderately good podcast anymore. Even though I just love, I got a lot of compliments on the name. Everyone thought it was clever. I loved it. It's like having a child, and now I'm giving up my child. So there is a level of like loss, a lot of vintage retro. I got a lot of vintage retro merchandise if anybody's interested.
But what I love the Just Be, because I love the three little things after it. What does it be? Be this, be that. But what does it say? They'll adjust.
Yeah.
And that was, because I feel like you were wearing a shirt that said that.
Yes.
And I loved it. I was like, because when I was looking, I was like, wait, that's different. That's different. But then I saw the shirt first, and then I saw the logo type of thing that kind of changing over. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, but I love They'll Adjust. And that's, I think of that whenever I think of like, I feel like I'm starting to not be myself authentically. I think of that. They'll adjust.
My girlfriend is she's my biggest supporter in everything I do, mainly because she allows me the time. She gives me the time to do these things, and she does it without judgment, and I don't ever feel guilty, and she encourages me and stuff like that. But she has the biggest problem with that shirt. She always tells me, she goes, I'll never wear that shirt. And it's always because, she always, well, what if that person's an asshole? You know what I mean? They don't get to continue to be an asshole and I have to adjust to them and stuff like that. And I go, but there's a level of like, we're always adjusting to others. So if someone's an asshole to me, I'm not adjusting to them when I leave the situation to get me away from them. I'm not adjusting to them. I'm taking care of myself, and I'm being authentic to myself. I'm allowing them to adjust to my loss of not being there. They're the person that's losing in that scenario to me. And so I can see how someone would see the part and go, they'll adjust and have a negative feeling around it. But, I'm not worried about everybody else. I'm worried. I'm taking care. I'm worried about me. It's like, the whole focus is me. Be present, be authentic, be humble, be gracious. That's me. That's who I'm trying to be. You know what I mean? If I'm doing all those things, then I don't have to worry about being the asshole that everyone has to adjust to.
I read somewhere that you were an aging specialist.
Well, aging specialist, you might call it like life alchemy is really, I have been really blessed that. Anyways, you said, did you want me to explain it? You said, I heard you're aging specialist, and I just jumped in there.
No.
Yeah.
Because I wrote trainer, purpose, and what about it do you love? So I know you started off as a trainer.
I started off as a trainer.
But now you've kind of morphed into your own thing. And I had heard on some previous interviews, for anybody who hasn't listened, you need to go back and listen to some of the interviews on Just Be. But I would say you're getting older, but does it necessarily, when I was in my 20s, I had an 88-year-old client at Gold's Gym. So I know your age doesn't make the difference, but where did you stop just being like the trainer and helping people like with general training needs and taking a more holistic approach and kind of morphing into what is this aging specialist?
I had this client, actually on my wall over here. You can't see it, but it's his hat. He was in the Navy, and I actually have his naval number tattooed on my arm.
Wow.
He came to me when he was 79 years old. And I've worked with people, trained with people as young as like 13. And he's not my oldest client to ever have, but he's my oldest client. And he also passed away from old age while I was his trainer. So I saw him through the last like 13 years of his life, and during that time, my grandparents passed away. I lost people. And his passing and what I learned and how I grew as a person during that time is, it's not only transformative to me. It 1000% shaped who I was. And it just gave me this incredible perspective. And it's given me this incredible perspective on my parents and them aging, and just patience and thoughtfulness around everyone, you know what I mean? Because we're all going that direction. Mm-hmm. And so I really started learning, especially with him towards the end. It wasn't like he couldn't do the stuff that I wanted to do. It's just his mind just was going like south so fast, and just particularly for him, his depression was really getting to him. And just, people don't realize this, but when you get 91 years old, you're tired. Like you've been doing this stuff for a lot. I've only been doing this like half that time.
My wife's got a client who's 97.
Yeah. And so, there's a level of you're fighting. And so you really have to find things to live for, and you have to find purpose, and you have to find ways to, serve other people, and to keep learning and growing as a person, even though I was just, what always amazed me about Dave is that, when I would teach him something, and I was like, what? And not like something like, oh, I taught him how to use his iPhone. Like I taught him something about communication or relationships. And he'd be like, I never thought of that. And I was like, holy fuck, in 91 years, you've never thought of this? And that was always mind blowing to me. And that just made me realize that oh, man, I got a lot of time to learn. And, getting in front of your physical health and getting in front of your mental health is so important, because it's a long race and you have to maintain that for the rest of the race, So when we were talking, when I was interviewing on you on my podcast, you were saying, hey, I worked out 3 times a week. And, and I was just thinking that's great. That's great. it should be we should be focusing on the long term, because you're here to live.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as much as some people are here to lift, you're here to live, you know, and you should lift and move appropriately. You should take care of your mind appropriately so that you can enjoy this as long as you possibly can, you know. It's so sad sometimes that people's lives become so miserable and they can't get out of their funks, or their health becomes so poor that it would just be they would feel better if they weren't here. You know what I mean? Because they didn't get in front of it, you know?
And we might have talked about it. You said you started it during the pandemic.
Yes, sir.
And where did besides the obvious of being the pandemic and everyone needed something to do and everybody's entrepreneurial spirit was coming out there, I can tell by what you do and what you've done for a living and kind of what you talk about that it was much more than just a time thing. Like, so there, what was that, you know, what was the real passion behind it that got you to start it?
You know, in some very Jerry Springer type moves, I had gotten married and I gotten divorced. My wife had moved out. The garage in here was full of like all of her stuff, and she was supposed to come get it at some point or whatever. My girlfriend at the time had moved in, you know, and so we're all living in sin and doing horrible stuff. And the garage empties out. And I was like, man, I don't, you know, what are we going to do with this like space? Like, what are we going to do? I don't, you know, we don't really see ourselves parking cars in here. It's, you know, it's a storage space at this, you know, it's like a regular garage at this point.
Yeah.
And so my girlfriend is a musician.
What does she play?
She plays the piano and the guitar. She was in a band. Their music's on Spotify. Clouds or Ghosts. If you want to check it out.
Oh.
But I mean, and she is a musician. She's currently a musician. And so, my thought was, as I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to soundproof the garage. We'll put a split unit in here. We'll make a room so that she can record music. And so that was my initial thing. And so like, I would, like, you know, and during the pandemic, I would, you know, even when I wasn't working, like I'd work on Zoom or whatever, but then I had to be back here. I couldn't go anywhere. So I'd have to be here at home. And my daughter had just been born. And so there was a lot of just putting her in her playpen and just having her be in here. And then I would just staple the soundproofing to the ceiling, and I set up the stereo, and we listen to music. And then I was like, what am I going to do with the walls? So I was like, you know, music, record covers. So we'll put the record covers on there. And, you know, and it just, I could show you pictures from the beginning. It was just like, just this wall. And there used to be the full garage door, and just the workout equipment. And that was like really it. And my girlfriend hated the space. She was like, the acoustics are horrible. I don't like it. And I was like, well, what the fuck are we going to do with this now? And so then I really had this, like, the original idea for the podcast was so huge. It was so magnanimous to think I was going to do everything I wanted to do in a podcast. So I try to accomplish everything I want to do in one podcast, and it fails horribly, you know, because I've never done it before. And then I was like, well, I wonder if I could talk somebody else into doing this. So I talked to one of my friends that she's a real big TikToker. She's a travel person. And she was like, I'll do it. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then I just kind of reached out to another friend, and that kind of started to catch like a little bit of momentum. And once, the only thing I can compare it to is like kind of just like playing pickup basketball. Once I started doing it, it was just something that I did. And then once I started doing it, and I was like, well, who could I ask next? And like, how big could this get? And then I was like, well, what's the artwork going to look like? And then I was like, well, how am I going to brand it? And then, you know, what's the logo going to, and then, like, it just started doing things.
Kind of take shape as it comes along.
Well, I didn't give, like, you know, there is a lot to be said for just figuring something the fuck out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just hand you a guitar And I go, for 1 month, I just want you to just pick up the guitar, just do shit with it. I don't need you to do anything, just do things. And in that 1 month, you're going to know a lot more about that guitar. Now, you might not be able to play a song, but you might know how to hold your hands and hold fret, all the things about a guitar, how to pick it, how to pick the individual strings, how to pick them in order, just by playing around with it. And essentially, like, people always go, what podcast do you listen to? I don't listen to any podcast. I listen to a couple, but I'm always listening for the interviewer. I'm never, the guest is interesting to me, and I want it to be someone I'm interested in, but I'm listening for the interviewer. That's what I'm listening to how he talks and how he interviews. Because to your point, when you were doing my podcast, is like, you want to be better at this skill. And that's how I sharpened my knife. And so then it became, okay, well, how much better can I get at this? And then, it just started to like take off. And then it just became like, man, this is something I'm doing. I'm really enjoying this. Like, I just don't want this to stop. I have a friend, and he's a real big podcaster. Like, he has a real big podcast. Right. And we always meet and have coffee, and I'm always giving him ideas and going like, you should do this, blah, blah, whatever. And I realized the other day, I like doing my podcast, but I really enjoy my job even more. And if I always do the podcast for fun, if it's always for just to spread word and interview interesting people, and my job takes off because of that, or I get to do more of my job because of that, then I'm winning,
So I think that's awesome that you feel that way about your job, how much you love it. And that's kind of, in support of that, but that you also enjoy this. I'm almost a little envious that I don't have something else like, whether it's the training thing or taking care of people. Although, we do a little bit like with, my wife, she takes care of older people. And so there's oftentimes I'm having to fill in or sub in, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of that, out of helping the older people, because there's so much you can learn, I think, too, from just talking to older people.
I work with this kid right now. He's going to turn 18. I've been working with him since he couldn't drive. So it must have been like 14 or something like that. Right. And, these are my two favorite moments with him. My first favorite moment is I gave him full permission to tell me when I've told him a story before. And so I'll start saying something. He'll go, you told me that before. And I'm like, shit. You know what I mean? But I also learn like all this crazy terminology and all these things that like kids do. And he introduces me to music and stuff. And I'm just like, it's so interesting. And it's just as interesting when I hang out with an 80-year-old client. You know what I mean? Like I always tell people, and this applies to the mental aspect of ourselves too. Everybody, as long as nothing tragedies has happened, has 2 arms, 2 feet, 2 hands, 2 legs, 2 ears, 2 eyes. I mean, 1 nose, 1 mouth. Like we all have brains. And so whether you're 13 or 83, you're experiencing the same shit, just at a different phase in a similar way. And so a lot of my coaching, like I don't coach 13-year-olds much different than I coach 83-year-olds. There are differences in the minute little details of what I do, but the overall idea is still the same, right? Are you trying to find ways to learn? Are you trying to find ways to serve? Are you trying to find ways to create in your life so that it creates stability around your mental, physical, and metaphysical or purpose, right? And the cool part about it is it's your own custom prescription. Like what I do can be a great suggestion, but like it's not going to be necessarily your solution. And like once you realize that, and you realize that you have to be the life alchemist that finds the way to make gold out of your life, then you go, I'll take a little piece of this, I'll take a piece of that. Hey, Scott, what do you think about this? Like that, my job is really like confirming directions which have no effect on me. You know what I mean? Like just giving someone the confidence I worked with this girl recently and she was having trouble with just like some lifts, some like physical lifts, like working out lifts. And really, it wasn't the physical lift she was having a problem with. She was having a problem with the mental part that the last time she lifted like that, she got hurt. And so I had to go, if we prep your body in the best way we can possible, then the chance of you getting hurt go way down. And then now she's lifting again, lifting the way she wants. Her mental fortitude is increasing, and she hopefully can go back to doing jujitsu, which is something she quit when all this happened. And so that's amazing. You know what I mean? But that's a mental thing. That's the mental physical struggle that they're constantly like having.
Oh, I love that. Oh, yeah, but I'm gonna save this one.
Okay, yeah, that's what.
Because this one's more of it's kind of something that I had on my list of questions. What do you miss most about childhood?
I just thought about this the other day. My girlfriend is not only a musician, but she's an artist. I have a degree in art. That's what I got my degree in school. I've always been an artist. And right now, if you walk into our house, our whole floors are covered with butcher paper that she has taped down, and they're just drawing like these scenes and these people and like all this stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
It's very cool. We don't do any devices in our house. And so, with that being said, there's going to be unique ways that we're going to explore stuff, and I have to be cool with that too. You know what I mean? Because I want the benefit of what my daughter's gaining out of that. Anywhoosie. Oh man, I totally forgot my train of thought. I was watching her draw, and I was thinking about that. So I grew up in a really small town, and all we had was this really small HEB. And if you're not from Texas, HEB is like the tits of grocery stores. But this is before HEB was like the mega giant of grocery stores that it is now. And just little in my hometown, it was just like little. Like if you've ever been it's 5,000 people. So I mean, the HEB is not big.
I'm from a town of 600 to 800.
So you get what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Y'all, do you even have an HEB?
We don't have an HEB. We have Brookshire's.
Yeah, Brookshire. Yeah,
Brookshire Brothers. Brookshire Brothers. This is
just Brookshire's. Oh, wow.
And it's the whole Brookshire's family. And it's like HEB of Tyler. And they they put out feelers 3 or 4 years ago that they were going to sell to HEB, and everybody was so fucking happy. And it was a lie.
Anywho, and so they would sell this manila paper. And my mom would just buy like just packages of it, and I would just sit in my room and I would just draw. I would just draw all the Muppets characters. I would draw fake athletes. I would make up stuff. I would just draw all the time, and then I would enter all these art fairs and stuff like that. And I guess I until I saw my daughter doing it, I just didn't remember how much I did that and how impactful that really was on me, and how it even impacts me now. And, if I had had like a device, would I have even explored that? Would I even have that memory? So I miss, the things I miss about childhood is like the freedom of all the things that you could do without the responsibilities of being an adult. But being an adult's pretty cool too.
It was just quite different. We didn't have all the distractions.
Well, we had different types of distractions.
Right. We did.
And they, I don't know if they were good or bad,
Oh, which celebrity do people say you resemble?
Okay. So, okay, I'll give you 3. And I have been Vanilla Ice for Halloween. And so I if I'm clean shaven and short hair, I mean, me and Robert Van Winkle we look a lot alike. I get Matthew McConaughey a lot. But I think that is just mainly because we have a similar accent and I kind of sound like him and stuff. I can kind of see it in my face, but I think people just get carried away. And then the third one is, if you look up here, there's a picture of me dressed as Jesus. and it's over here behind next to the Whataburger sign.
Oh yeah.
And so I feel like I probably kind of look a little bit like Jesus.
Holy cow.
Which, probably not. I look like the white version of the Roman Catholic version of Jesus. I probably don't look like Jesus really looked in real life, but yeah, those are my lookalikes.
If you could give all human beings one virtue, which would you choose?
I really wish, I don't know if this is a virtue. That's the only problem. I really wish I could just give people just awareness. You know what I mean? Like there's just so many great things that come out of your own awareness. And it's so hard to achieve for some people. It's so, and I think a lot of times when we, we get in finger point matches with people and they're like, you do this and you do this and you do this. I think there's a lot of valid times where you could go, well, that person's just projecting on me. But if someone's saying you do this, this, and this, that would be a great time to do a self-inventory and have the awareness to go, do I do that? Am I like that? Is that the person that I am? And those are moments where you can really, really grow. And I think that instead of doing that, we get really offended and then we're mad at that person for pointing out something that's probably true, And look, I've had plenty of people point out things that I really don't think that I am, but I really do. I leave that person and then I really think about it. And I'll even go take it as far as like, if I change my mind and I go, that person's right. I'll even like text them or call them and go, you know what? I owe you an apology for this. Or like, you're right. That is something I do need to work on. Now, I'm not saying that happens really often because I feel like I do carry around a lot of awareness.
Right.
But, it's my new awareness and the working in that category is one of the greatest gifts I've given myself. It's the one thing that I wish people could experience because it's also very freeing. It's free to have the awareness and the recognition about the things that you are and the things that you aren't so that you don't get offended and people don't step on your shit and that you can be whole as a person even when somebody else is having a shit day. A lot of my work involves people not having the best of times. That's why I'm a coach. So that means I'm going to pick up a lot of emotions and feelings, and I have to be able to not take care of that into a next session or even not carry that to my family or even not just carry it because I don't want to have a shit day. You know what I mean? There's a lot of like mental like regeneration I got to do in between appointments and stuff. And so, awareness would be, is awareness a virtue? Is that a virtue?
It may be.
What are virtues? Tell me.
I don't know. I was thinking of that.
This is when I need like an assistant.
What do they say? Like, something is patience is a virtue?
Yeah. So awareness is a virtue.
Yeah. Another question. How do you define integrity and do you have it?
I think that, well, let me start with, I do think that I have it. I think it is from a very young age. That is the example that both my parents, but specifically my dad, showed that it is like it's integrity over everything. That your word and what you do is who you are. And I always thought that was like awesome. That my dad would, when everyone disagreed, would say, no, this isn't right. Like we don't, we don't do this. And so, I think your integrity, not to sell my own shit, but it's very close related to your authenticity. And if you're really authentic as a person, it's not hard to have integrity,
I agree.
But, it's our pitfalls of ourselves, the dark parts, the ego, the shadow self, all those terms, that part that we're trying to protect, that we don't want anybody to see, that gets us to do stuff that we wouldn't normally do. And then they make shows called Dateline and, to
Catch a Predator.
To Catch a Predator. I mean, really, like, it's like, but I was very lucky. Like, I always tell people, I'd probably have tattoos on my face if my parents weren't so strict. You know what I'm saying? Because if they hadn't been as strict as they were, how bad would this have gotten? You know? And so I feel really blessed to have my parents. They did the best with what they had, you know?
What's the most fun you've ever had at a party?
Oh, okay. Look,
Most
I
fun
don't,
you ever had at a party without your girlfriend here?
no. You know what's, so let me just say this. I tell people this all the time. There's a bunch of things I tell people that they're like, your relationship is doomed. And I'm like, you don't understand really how a relationship works if you think that my relationship's doomed. So my girlfriend doesn't listen to any of my podcasts.
Neither is my wife.
Okay. And it's so great that she allows it to be mine. And there's probably a level, there's things she doesn't want to hear. There's probably stuff that she would love, that she would be blessed if she heard it. She would be grateful if she heard it. But it's just like, it's not, she wants to spend her time with other things, and it allows it to be my art, which is like great. The most fun I've ever had at a party. I mean, I have been blessed to do a lot of partying. I once went to a fraternity party that was in an old hospital. And so like they had taken all the rooms and they had turned them into like dorm rooms for like the fraternity guys. And then they had taken like the main kitchen area and turned it into like a dance floor. I mean, and the party was like, the hospital was huge. The place was huge. And I just never been to anything that was like it was like a movie, you know? When I got married, we did a joint bachelorette party in Vegas. And we went to a pool party. And like we had a cabana. And I think the total bill was like, it was like over $2,000. That's a lot for a $2,000 bill. Is like that's hefty for me.
Yeah.
I'm not balling that crazy. Right. And I remember being like, holy shit, this is so much fun. I don't even give a fuck that this bill is $2,000. You know what I mean? But then, you know, you take examples like that. And then one of my friends throws a crawfish boil every year. It's one of my favorite things to do every summer. It's usually like in July. He has a pool. It's huge. He tells all the neighbors, you know, they shut down the block. Like it's a whole thing. And that's some of my favorite, like, that's my favorite time every year. Like, you know, like that we're going to go to this. My daughter's been going to it, you know, I had a friend, we had a birthday party in Mexico at a resort, and we all bought like matching like short sleeved suits, the ones that are like the shorts and the jacket that like they have the crazy prints. And we went to one of the restaurants like on the resort and like partied all night, went into Mexico when it was like still safe. So it's like, you know, I think a lot of the really great times I've had like partying, it's always been just really great people. I've always been very lucky to have like really great friends. So, or friends that wanted to party, friends that wanted to do things. Like, I feel like the hardest part about having a good time is talking people into it. You were asking like, how did I get all this experience in like in functional aging or life alchemy or coaching like life? Well, you know, when you take the 20 plus years of physical experience I have, and then I saw my first therapist when I was 20 or something like that. And I went to therapy off and on for almost 25 years. It's like this whole secondary education, you know, that I gained. Multiple therapists, different types of therapists, different situations, like, you know. And so all of that has given my personal life and then the lives I've watched, that give me a lot of perspective on like what this should look like and how you can do it better, you know?
Oh, so I'm going to ask you one of my questions before I ask the last six back.
Yeah.
And it's kind of because we're on this topic. How's being a father changed you for the better, if it has? And what do you love most about being a father?
I'm really glad that I had a daughter
Me too.
because if I'd have had a son, I would have known everything already, and I would have been doing what we tend to do when it's the same sex, which is like I'm a girl, I know how to be a girl. Let me show you how to be a girl. I'm a boy. Let me show you how to be a boy. And so ultimately, like, we're learning together, and that process of learning together about who she is as a girl has really it's really changed my perspective. This sounds so fucked up, but it's true. It's really changed my perspective on women and how I want women to be treated, how I want my daughter to be treated, how I want my girlfriend to be treated, how women should be treated, what they should do, they should be able to take care of themselves. It made me incredible. I think a child in general makes you incredibly more aware, but I think it made me really aware of like how everyone sees me, not just certain people or certain situations or certain things, because how those people see me is also how she sees me and what kind of example am I setting, and that is really, it blows my mind that people would have children and don't go through this thought process. It blows my mind that people could have children and still be selfish to the point where it's harmful to their children. Like, it's cool to be selfish if it's not harming really you or anybody else. But like, when you're being selfish and it's harming your children, that's, I can't even fathom. I can't even fathom,
It's like being selfish to fill up your own cup so you can give back to your family versus, like my time taking out in the morning. But yeah, that's about as selfish as it gets.
My selfish time is literally like the time that I carve out myself that I just don't make for anybody else.
Right.
But even in that at the same time, if there was an emergency with my girlfriend, I mean, obviously they come first, right?
Yeah, I cut my workout the other day to go get my daughter from school.
Right. And so, but I think where people get caught up is they're like, okay, well, I got to be available for everything. And it's like, no, you don't. And also, that's fucking annoying. And also, like, that person doesn't want that. And also, you wouldn't want that. You wouldn't want somebody just hanging around being ready for, like, and plus, going to take care of yourself, working out, it shows a great example. I mean, it just, like, it goes endless. Like, you know what I mean? Like, again, back to the question you asked before, what would you give people? Awareness. Because if you had awareness, you would understand all this shit. You would understand that your kids are seeing this. You would understand that your kids aren't fucking up because of a kid at school or something they see on TV or whatever. If you're directly involved in your kid's life, they're fucking up because of you and your lack of awareness around who you are as a person, how long you're on the device. Like, people always complain about kids being on devices. Half the time I'm anywhere, the parents are on devices too. Like, I kind of have this rule, and I'm being loose about this, but like, I'm only on my phone when I'm alone.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like when I'm by myself, that's when I doom scroll. That's when I, do like stuff on my phone. Only when I'm by myself, because at any other time, I'm probably taking away from whatever else I'm like doing. Right. And so, and that, I mean, I use Google Maps.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's, but it's one of those things, like, I'm not doing selfish stuff on my phone when I'm with other people.
What is the one goal that you hope to accomplish this year?
I remember when I thought that I would just be fucking miserable forever. That my life would just, this is just life. It's miserable like this. This is what you do. And so to be on the other side of that and have such like gratitude and stuff like that, it sounds so corny and like just stupid to say something like, but like, I mean, my goal is like just to stay blessed and stay alive, like to not have anything bad happen, and like to keep prospering and have my daughter prosper,
It makes perfect sense to me, because if you ask me what my goal would be by the end of the year, I'm like, I don't really know.
Well, my goal every day is to remain grateful.
Yeah.
I mean, I always feel like a dickhead because, I'll check on a friend. I'll go, hey, how you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm doing good, man. So good to hear from you. How are you doing? And it's always the same answer. I always give the same answer every single time. I always say, I'm blessed every single time. And I always feel like that they probably read that and they go, this fucking dude was just blessed and shit. You know what I mean? But there's no other way else for me to explain that in a life that I had before where I just didn't want to live, when you're on the other side of that, you feel so grateful for every day that you want to. And you also feel robbed of the days that you could have had if you just could have changed your mindset. You just could have thought of things a little bit different, that it could have been so much different. It could have been such a different experience. How you experience things is a lot about how you go into it and what you're thinking about it. You know what I mean? Like, and that's powerful shit. And you can call it like, you know, like hippity dippity woo woo stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, you talk about, we always, and some people describe it as woo woo shit, but your vibrational energy and, you know, how's your vibe? Are you vibing?
I refuse people. I refuse you to have a bad time around me. Go ahead and try.
Well, but you
like
know,
try to be in a bad mood around me.